So Jill Raymond is active member of UK WDI Women's Declaration International. She wrote a letter explaining the concerns for lesbian rights to many parliamentarians, maybe all of them in the UK, and then was invited to come and explain those issues and bring along some other lesbians to the House of Lords, well, by a lord, or a baroness, and had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, which seemed to go quite well. So Jill's going to tell us about that. And thank you very much for coming, Jill, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yes, indeed, because as Sue had given us a good summary of what's been going on in Scotland, and a lot of us have been following that across the UK, particularly through WDI updates from Sally. So there were quite a lot of letter writing campaigns around it being coming to the UK Parliament for royal assent. And I've also been listening to a lot of lesbians speaking on our webinars and in the breakout room about how we've been losing our lesbian spaces, what's happening to lesbians online. And, you know, it's the two things sort of conflated. So I wrote a letter just I called it a lesbian perspective on the impact of the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, Scotland. You know, you write these letters, you just get a stock reply. And I never expected that a week later I'd be in the House of Lords with a bunch of lesbians. So, but what I did was I took it to our regular UK WDI meeting, and I said, look, I've written this, but it could go from me, but it could go from all of us. So they quickly agreed it, and it's very brief and to the point. And so it went the next morning and landed on the inbox of Baroness Nicholson. One of the women had suggested we particularly wrote to her because she's got she's 80 years old, and she's got a long record of being quite a feminist and a big supporter of women's rights. So so we were immediately invited, like by midday, to meet her, and the week that the royal assent was due, and there was a little bit of like, well, it's obviously going to not get passed in the UK. The royal assent is not looking like it's going to be granted, but she had a lot of emails from her, and she said, you know, it just because it's looking like it's not going to go through on Thursday doesn't mean the thing is over. You know, we're in this for the long haul, so I hope you'll still come and meet us. So then she had to book a committee room, and you know, the emails were coming thick and fast. She managed to get a committee room that would hold 40 people. So she said, you know, we've got a big room. It's the only one I could get. We can't, unfortunately, do Zoom from it, but try and fill it up. Try and fill it up. And I will invite my friends too, which we weren't too sure what that meant. Well, I don't think most of it, I wasn't. So in the end, she only wanted lesbian speakers and lesbian guests. So we managed to find through our immediate WDI contacts, really, we got 6 women to speak. Jo obviously was there to introduce WDI as an international global networking. And then so we got about 20 guests to manage to turn up at 5 o'clock on a midday week. It proved very hard. It was impossible to find any young lesbians that would A, be available, and B, want to risk that level of exposure, because it was like they would be coming out by attending that meeting. And actually, that's really highlighted for me how much responsibility us as elders have to into the younger generations of lesbians. So you know, most of us have got a lot less to lose. We're not necessarily in work, for example. So Bernadette and I were invited to have tea with her an hour before the meeting, which also wasn't very expected, but it did help us put us at ease. And another thing that I just sort of mention is that Baroness is quite hard of hearing, so she does lip read. So that was a sort of a consideration. I felt that was a consideration, but it was all being recorded. And when we got into the room, it was full. Her guests, we had been given a guest list, and her guests were cross-party parliamentarians from House of Commons and the House of Lords. I think we can safely say that they weren't all on our side, but some of them sent their aides, because it was at the very time that it was all going off in the House of Commons with Moyles and the unpleasantness within the Labour ranks, you know. So anyway, we had 6 speakers, and then she took on the chair and chairing, and opened it to her parliamentary guests to ask our broader guests some questions. And one of the things that was really nice was Joanna Cherry had come, and she spoke about how touched and overwhelmed she was to be sitting in that room with full of lesbians. Oh yeah, there's that lovely picture of us at the end. She had Baroness Nicholson had invited her niece to sit in to listen, so her niece took the photograph for us. So yeah, so that's we were all like, oh, we were only there an hour. And another thing that happened was that parliamentarians were coming and going. You can see one in that picture just about to leave. Every time one arrived, she stopped the meeting to introduce them and welcome them and get a seat for them. So this actually sort of nipped quite a bit of the time that we had. So we didn't have a lot of time at the end for questions and answers, but we felt very welcomed, and that it was a great response, basically. And then one of the things that I'd really hoped was that WDI would impress her enough, and that she would like us enough, that we would be able to become an organisation for ongoing consultation. And one of the things that has become really apparent over this, or a lot of the the laws around self-ID, are that no women's organisations have been consulted. And so we actually, I think it also works for WDI that we're not politically aligned. In the House of Lords, they do a lot more cross-party work for more non-UK listeners, but the House of Lords, they're not elected. So our House of Commons are elected, but there's a lot of scrutiny and cross-party work goes on in the House of Lords. I think I've explained that reasonably well. So so we were delighted at the end of the meeting, with all the thanks was going on, and she said, I'm so interested. Some of the speakers were really moving. You could see some of the parliamentarians looked a bit shocked at some of the statements that our speakers were making. And she said, I hope that you will be able to come back again. You'll be very welcome to come back again, which was just like the icing on the cake, really, wasn't it? So she's also a very big tweeter. So almost before we got to the pub to sort of celebrate a little bit, we had a little wander around the Houses of Parliament and stopped off for this photo opportunity in the Great Hall. Bernadette, she wants us to bring a delegation of speakers, not specifically or only lesbian, but a broader range of speakers to talk about the conversion therapy bill and potential amendments. So we've got a hard-working team, a core group working on this, and I have to say, a bit like with Vikki, really, we've got to know each other and supported each other in an unexpected way, but we've been attending webinars and breakout rooms. We've got to know each other. On Monday nights we meet, and this has made it possible for us to form a core group to work closely and really efficiently and harmoniously to get this done in a week. So yes, thank you, WDI. Thank you, all our supporters, and full steam ahead.